Now, please be joined by a guest from South Dakota, from Sioux Falls, Matt Zimmer, who works for Sioux Falls Live. He was in town in Tuscaloosa over the weekend for a very South Dakota matchup between Kalen DeBoer and Josh Heupel. And Matt, it's great to have you join us. First of all, just how was the trip and getting to see Alabama and Tennessee on Saturday?
It was fun. I actually was able to attend the Georgia game last year in Kalen's debut season, so wasn't my first time, but it was definitely fun to come back. When I went last year, I was able to bring some family, and once in a lifetime experience. We just don't have SEC football type atmospheres up in the north, so to see a Crimson Tide game, to be on campus, to experience all of that was really incredible. And then to come back in it was more of a fan experience the first time. This year to come back and be working and be in the press box and kind of experience from that side of it was really something. And obviously, it was really surreal to be watching an SEC game between two ranked teams and both coaches being from South Dakota. I mean, there was a time where it was newsworthy if there was a backup linebacker at a Big Ten school that was from South Dakota. Now to have two head coaches in two of the most prominent jobs in all of college football, and having been, I'm close to their age, so having been able to follow their rise from South Dakota to where they are today, like I said, surreal is the word that I just kind of keep coming back to.
That's incredible. And let's start with Crimson Tide head coach Kalen DeBoer. When was the first time you met him?
We actually played amateur baseball against each other over 20 years ago. Amateur baseball is a big deal in South Dakota, and he played for a team called the Renner Monarchs that were kind of like the New York Yankees of South Dakota amateur baseball. They win championships all the time. They get all the best players, and Kalen was the best player. And I'm not blowing smoke. I mean, he was an incredible hitter. I could sit here and tell you stories about his tape measure home runs all day. And going against him, it was like, wow, that guy's probably got a future in sports somewhere. And a couple years later, he actually gave up baseball, got into football coaching. And that was around the same time I started working for the local newspaper in Sioux Falls. He was an assistant coach at the University of Sioux Falls, a tiny NAIA school that didn't even have a home field. They practiced in the parking lot on campus. He worked under Bob Young, a very legendary small school coach who Kalen played for. He ended up replacing him as head coach in 2005, I believe. And so he started his coaching career the same time I started my journalism career. I was the beat writer for the University of Sioux Falls. And that was when I got to know Kalen. I was 25, he was 30. And we both kind of learned college football together. And I've been fortunate enough to stay in touch with him and just keep tabs on his career all the way up the ladder.
And looking back to those early days of Kalen DeBoer as a coach, did you see the big school ambition for him, or was he always just kind of focused on whatever task he had right in front of him at the time?
I would say he was certainly more focused on the day to day. One of his mantras has always been, be in the present, live where your feet are, that kind of thing. And he has said many times when he took that job, he would have been perfectly content to coach the Cougars till he retired. At the same time, it was very quickly obvious how what a bright future him and his staff had. Chuck Morrell, who is now the linebackers coach at Alabama, was Kalen's right hand man, was his defensive coordinator. Curtis Riggs, his best friend and offensive coach. Those three in particular, and it wasn't just those three, but those three in particular, you could just sort of see the way they went about their business, their eye for talent, and how serious they took it. Because at that level of football in the NAIA in South Dakota in the Midwest, they were so much better than all of their opponents. And at times you kind of wanted to say to them, guys, why are you taking this so seriously? It's NAIA football, you're going to win 70-0 on Saturday. And they were still so detail oriented. They could be playing a team that they absolutely knew they were going to beat by 70 points. And they were still up till 1 a.m. watching film and scouting and getting ready. They were so professional and so businesslike and so in love with the work and wanting to do it that you kind of looked at it and said, there's no way this guy's going to still be in coaching NAIA football. He has to move up at some point. And obviously after 5 years and a 67-3 record, that call finally came.
Yeah, 67-3. It's just absolutely remarkable, no matter the level of football. And you again see him make the rise through Division I football as well as an assistant coordinator, eventually be a head coach. Take me back to that week where he coaches in a national championship game on a Monday night, and then is the Alabama head coach by Friday. Your perspective on that massive week in Kalen DeBoer's life?
Well, it was weird because the man who hired Kalen, his name is Willie Sanchez. He used to be a Major League Baseball agent. He was a Big Ten basketball referee. And then later in his life, when he was semi retired, Willie became the athletic director at the University of Sioux Falls. He was the one who hired Kalen, and he was the one who, after their third national championship, told him, "You need to spread your wings and fly away. Time to go. You need to move up the ladder." So Willie always had a very unique relationship with Kalen and a key role in his ascension. But I called Willie the week of the national championship game just because I was writing a feature story about Kalen taking Washington to the national championship. And Willie said to me, "Hey, I got a scoop for you." And I said, "What's that?" And he goes, "Nick Saban's going to retire and Kalen's going to replace him." And I was like, "Oh, shut up." And it made sense. As soon as he said it, I was like, well, Saban's pretty old and Kalen's kind of the hottest name in coaching right now. I guess I could see that. But I sure didn't think it was actually going to happen. But then all of a sudden, those gears started turning, and you kind of thought, oh my gosh, this really might happen. And again, the only word I can go back to is surreal because, we thought it was amazing when he was the offensive coordinator at Indiana. We're like, wow, he went from NAIA to the Big Ten. And then he's the head coach at Fresno State. You're like, wow, he's a head coach at the FBS level. Every one of those steps on the ladder just felt amazing. Like, we can't believe he's here. And then all of a sudden, to be playing on the national championship game on TV against Michigan, against Jim Harbaugh, and then to hear he could be replacing Nick Saban, it's like, what planet are we on? Who's writing this script? I mean, it's really hard to overstate how crazy that felt for people back in South Dakota who, until South Dakota State moved up to the 1AA level of 20 years ago, we didn't even have Division I football in South Dakota. So to see that again, the word I keep going back to is surreal. I didn't reach out to Kalen in that week or so because I kind of thought, he's pretty busy right now talking to Nick Saban and meeting all these people in Alabama. But I did get a chance to connect with him shortly after he got the job, and it was kind of wild how, I don't want to say unimpressed he was, because he's very aware of the gravity of that job. But there was no like, oh wow, I can't believe I'm here, or this is so amazing. It was, again, just very businesslike. Like, well, yeah, you do your job, you keep putting your head down and going to work and doing things the right way and surrounding yourself with the right people, and this is the kind of thing. This is where you end up.
Yeah, and that's the consistent Kalen DeBoer we've really seen ever since he got to Tuscaloosa, of course, last season, even into this season. And he remains pretty steady, but he had a lot of emotion, especially coming out of the tunnel, as you wrote about in your piece against Tennessee. Had you seen that kind of emotion from him before?
Not before a game. As you've probably caught on from watching him the last year and a half, he gets very emotional during a game, very animated, coaching his players, talking to the refs, stuff like that. But he's always kind of made it a point to be that very even keel guy. Certainly before games, at practices. I think that's been a hallmark of his success as a coach. He probably got some of that from Coach Young. But I'm sitting in the press box with a bunch of Alabama media, and they put him on the screen, and he's clapping all hard, and then he punched the goalpost, and everyone looked at me like, "Have you ever seen that before?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And it was funny. There were a bunch of former University of Sioux Falls players at the game on Saturday, and I was texting with some of them during the game because they obviously would know him even better than me. They played for him for 4 years and were around him all the time behind the scenes. And I asked him, I said, "Have you ever seen Kalen that fired up before a game?" And all of them, "No, never. Haven't seen that before." So that was kind of wild to see him step outside of his personality a little bit. He kind of downplayed it a little bit because everyone was asking about it in the press conference, and he tried to downplay it. He said, "Well, my players got me fired up." But I think that does go to show that he's maybe becoming a little more comfortable in this job and starting to respond to how the players have responded to him. I think as much as Kalen knows who he is and how he wants to coach, he's also the kind of guy that I think can read the room and can understand, what are my players going to respond to? What do they need from me? And maybe he figured out after going 9-4 last year that, hey, this team wants a little more fire. They want a little more of a kick in the butt once in a while. And when you see what they've done the last 5-6 weeks, it looks like it's working.
Yeah, absolutely. And he knows the fan base too, likes the black hoodie. Did he have a signature piece of clothing, anything like that with Sioux Falls?
I don't think so. Not that I remember.
That's funny. Well, great to see that again from Kalen DeBoer. And our Alabama football is starting to see some more Alabama gear around South Dakota as you go around now that Kalen's making his mark here.
It's funny when he was coaching Washington, a lot of the USF players and fans loved it because it was the same colors. The University of Sioux Falls was also purple. So everyone's like, "Hey, I can still wear my purple." Then he gets the Alabama job, and everybody in South Dakota that had temporarily become a Huskies fan, well, I guess we're roll tide now. And so it's funny. I have a couple Alabama shirts that I've picked up as kind of following Kalen and following Alabama, and almost every time I go out in Sioux Falls, I'll see somebody in town that'll give me a roll tide. So it has certainly caught on up here.
That's a really cool perspective. Again, Matt Zimmer with Sioux Falls Live. Just thank you for the time you've given us here on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. We look forward to seeing you again, hopefully down the road, either here in Tuscaloosa or on the road. But just thank you for the time you've given us.
You bet. Thanks, Roger.